NASA's alarms didn't fail that night. They were hijacked. On a quiet night in June 1999, the temperature alarms inside the International Space Station's control software should have been silent. But deep inside NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, a command line flickered to life. A rogue connection had slipped past Department of Defense encryption, moving through the network like a ghost. It dissolved firewalls built to shield nuclear weapons data and orbital life support systems. This wasn't Russia, or China, or any state-sponsored threat. The signal came from a bedroom in South Florida. NASA called it one of the worst intrusions in its history. On June 29, 1999, system administrators in Huntsville noticed something strange. It wasn't a brute force attack, it was elegant. A hidden sniffer had been planted deep inside their server architecture. For weeks, this invisible parasite intercepted thousands of login credentials. The intruder exfiltrated $1.7 million worth of proprietary software, including the source code controlling the International Space Station's physical environment. If that code was altered or misused in the future, once crews were living aboard the ISS, life support systems could have been pushed into catastrophic failure. Prosecutors would later argue it posed a direct risk to human life. Panic surged. NASA shut down their primary network for 21 days, halting operations and spending millions to cleanse the system. As the screens went dark, one question remained. Who was skilled enough to outmaneuver the US government? The answer would embarrass the Department of Defense for decades. The investigation launched immediately. NASA's Office of Inspector General teamed with the Defense Criminal Investigative Service. They expected a foreign intelligence service, KGB veterans, or a cyber warfare unit. Digital footprints led to a compromised server in Dulles, Virginia, a back door into the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Then the trail went cold, until a single mistake cracked everything open. The IP didn't resolve to a bunker in Moscow or a cyber cell in Beijing. It led to a quiet suburban home in Pinecrest, Florida, lined with palm trees and sunshine. The intruder wasn't a spy, not a disgruntled employee. He was a 15-year-old boy, Jonathan James. Online, he was Comrade. To understand how a teenager dismantled military security, you have to understand the mind of Jonathan James. Jonathan wasn't a troubled kid. He was quiet, introverted, brilliant. While other kids were playing Nintendo 64, he was learning Unix and C like native languages. By 15, he wasn't just looking at screens, he was looking through them. He breached Bell South and the Miami-Dade school system, not for money, not to destroy grades, but to see if he could. But the NASA hack was different. It was a masterpiece of exploitation. Jonathan discovered a vulnerability in a server running the Solaris operating system. He found a buffer overflow weakness. Essentially, he poured more data into a digital cup than it could hold. When the memory overflowed, it overwrote the system's instructions with his own code. When the system rebooted, it didn't listen to the administrators. It listened to him. This gave him root access, the digital keys to the kingdom. Once inside, he didn't smash the windows. He installed a sniffer. Think of a sniffer like a wiretap on a busy highway. Every piece of data, emails, passwords, commands, travels in packets. Most people just let the traffic pass. Jonathan's software quietly read every license plate. He sat in his bedroom, watching thousands of government employees log in. He captured usernames and passwords from over 3,000 intercepted messages involving DoD employees. With those credentials, he didn't need to hack NASA's front door. He just walked right in. He was reading emails about the space program before the directors did. But in the physical world, the knock on the door was coming. January 26, 2000. Dawn. The scene outside the James residence looked like a counterterrorism operation. Unmarked cars blocked the street. Agents in tactical gear surrounded the perimeter. They were prepared for a sophisticated enemy combatant. Jonathan's father, Robert James, woke up to pounding on the door. He later told reporters he thought it was a prank, or perhaps a drug raid on the wrong house. When he opened the door, he faced the barrel of a gun. Agents swarmed the hallway, shouting commands, clearing rooms. They burst into Jonathan's room. They didn't find a server farm. They didn't find weapons. They found a skinny 16-year-old in his pajamas. They seized everything: computers, devices, loose disks. They took the machine he used to play games and the machine he used to bring NASA to its knees. NASA and the DoD were furious. In the press, they didn't paint him as a curious kid. They painted him as a threat to national security. The prosecutors stated the intrusion caused a direct risk to human life aboard the ISS. They wanted an example, and Jonathan was the perfect target. Jonathan insisted he meant no harm. He called the stolen code crappy, saying it wasn't worth the $1.7 million NASA claimed. But the law was clear. In September 2000, he became the first juvenile in U.S. history incarcerated for cybercrime. 6 months in a juvenile detention program, followed by probation. No unsupervised computer access. Jonathan served his sentence. He tried to normalize his life. But the label hacker is a tattoo that doesn't wash off. Years passed. Then came 2007. A massive corporate breach hit companies like TJX. Millions of credit cards stolen. It was the largest theft of consumer data in history at the time. Investigators suspected a hacker ring led by Albert Gonzalez. Jonathan knew some of the suspects from his old online days. To the Secret Service, that was enough. They raided his home again. They found a legally registered gun, but no digital link to the breach. He denied everything. But the pressure mounted. The Secret Service followed him. They questioned his friends. Jonathan believed the government would pin the crime on him, evidence or not. He felt the walls closing in, driven by a system that had already decided who he was. He wrote one final letter. It wasn't a confession. It was an indictment of the justice system. I honestly had nothing to do with TJX. I have no faith in the justice system. I've lost control over this situation, and this is my only way to regain control. On May 18, 2008, Jonathan James ended his life. Jonathan's death shook the hacker world. Many believe he was a casualty of a system unable to distinguish curiosity from malice. His intrusion forced NASA and the DoD to overhaul their security architecture. This was the story of Comrade, the teenager who slipped into NASA's systems and changed cyber history. Because sometimes, the greatest threats don't come from enemy nations. They come from the shadows of our own world.